Hi everybody, welcome to yet another amazing episode of The Bald Box, where we talk to bald men about bald-wide issues affecting society and the nation and the world at large. I'm so honored to have these guys here. These guys are personal friends and they're just amazing people that have a lot of insights on what we're going to talk about today. Today's episode is going to be about wellness and mental health. And I think it's a topic that needs to be discussed. I got a lot of fan mail from guys asking me to talk about this issue. So I'm not going to talk about it really. I'm just going to mediate the two of you as you converse. Let me introduce you guys to the guests. On my right, introduce yourself and say that
My name is Eric Omondi.
Any relation with the comedian?
None. Not any. And I'm glad to be here. I like to refer myself as a conversationalist. So I speak for work. I've worked in radio, as you know, and in television. And I run a web series and a podcast called Eric Stories.
Yeah, man. Eric and I have been friends for the last 10 years.
A long time.
And Eric has been a very, very fundamental, a pillar in my life, man, as a brother and as a general stand-up human being. When I met him, he was 140 kilos. And then he told me one day he's tired of being in that weight category. And he just worked his way down. I've seen Eric go vegan. I've seen him go to the gym, do CrossFit. I've seen him run for 3 years, 10 kilometers a day consistently. And the one thing that I draw from you, Eric, is just the consistency and just the will to live life and to be better every day. You read too many books. You're a G.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. On my left,
I
want to introduce. Niseme wewe ni lawyer ama niseme wewe ni
sema yote. Toa yote.
What do you do on the side?
I'm a lawyer, and a podcaster, none of which are on any side. I run a podcast called mantalk.ke with my very, very good business partner and co-host Eli Mwenda.
Yes.
And we've been doing a lot of work on trying to raise kind of awareness towards what mental health means specifically for men. And I am personally affected by the worldwide issues. It was a very hard day that I had to make that decision to lose my hair, but kinyozi ndio imenileta hapa.
So actually, I want to ask you the first question.
Okay.
When did your hairline forsake you?
Yo, let me tell you, this was the worst time in my life. It was 5 years ago, so it was absolutely the worst time in my life. I was I just gotten through a rough breakup.
Alikuacha na nywele.
Manzi alienda na nywele. Alienda nayo. So I just got to cry heavily. I almost for a long time, 90 days. But your relationship sikuwa najua hairline iko kwa warranty sikusoma. So I just gone through a bad breakup, and then I was now getting into my legal career, which was at that time. Now I was making the decision to go to law school, and now making that decision at that time, I used to work in tech, so unajua pesa za tech zimeingia mkono mfuko ya kijana, lazima nisimamishe niseme naingia KSL, which is the school of law, ndio so that I can now get my life back on track and just kind of get more focused. So it was a hard time of transition. So nakumbuka siku kinyozi wangu shout out to Chalo the Baba at that time. Chalo aliniambia boss,
Chalo shout out.
Shout out to Chalo the Baba. Najua any celebrity baba penye yako atashare content. So nilisikia Chalo unajua vijana trick kwa cut. Ananiambia leo nimeenda sana. Yaani hata mimi umechallenge my work. So Chalo after amerudi nyuma akaniambia boss, let's have a conversation.
Wow.
Akaniambia bro,
ulifeel kama umeenda visit alafu ile counseling ya before test you.
Alipele counseling ile hapa na tukiendelea hivi tafika shingo. So tufanye hivi. So tufanye hivi. Wewe tutoe wardrobe, fikiria venye utafanya ndio fit into it. So nashukuru Mungu sana Chalo kwa unaona hii ball box kwa sababu yako.
Hey man,
because your decision.
Amazing. Eric, when did you realize? Actually, Eric, when I met you, you had a full head of hair. in your 20s.
Yes, man. I don't know. I don't have quite an elaborate story.
I mean, you still haven't come to terms.
I just one morning woke up and decided a patch was coming. When I was combing my hair, I could feel it on the sides. So I decided that I'll have to let go, man.
And you're
I
living
caved.
positively.
So nowadays I just cut my hair clean. Nyoa tu yote. Yeah.
Okay, what is your ritual when you're cutting your hair? Like, is there any special way you like it done? Some people like using a razor, some people like using a machine. What's your ritual?
I'm trying to embrace cutting it with a razor because it's inexpensive. And then because I visit the barbershop too much. And if you haven't noticed, they charge quite an arm and a leg now, eh?
And I'm gonna like when you're lucky power.
Yeah. Because there are those ladies who also have to kanda you, and I enjoy those sessions. So after they cut your hair, you remove your shirt.
Hey.
And then they have to, you don't do that at your barbershop at That's the only beat I'm struggling with about cutting my own hair because nobody's going to kanda me.
You guys know.
So how it works at my barbershop, my barbershop is called Nick. My barber is called Nick. So he cuts it clean, and then I have to unbutton my shirt and remove my vest.
Hey,
and then a lady comes.
Wait.
Bro, man.
Yeah. You have to be completely topless. Then the lady comes, locks the door. It's a very private, intimate moment. Like just you two. And then she applies oil all over your top sections and just feel. Then she asks you if you're satisfied. This is 45 minutes later.
Wait, first of all, the question I have for you is: did you expect this when you were bald? Did this come in the contract? Because mine came in a different way.
I'm about to go there, man. I'm about to go to that place. Eric, I've known you for 10 years. You've never told me about this
No,
chick.
you have to keep that things hush. It's a quiet, secret place. But it feels good, man. I love it. So I have to attend religiously every week.
I expect you to attend religiously.
And they wipe you with hot water.
Okay. Hey, my brother, like, what's your ritual, man?
Nothing close to yours. My guy. So I actually prefer the blade for the beard because for me, I have sensitive skin. So I get the machine for the head, but for the beard, because I like precision, so I always like to see like the result is clean. So I usually prefer the blade. And even when I'm at the barbershop, I always emphasize manze usiguse imali tafadhali imali jo naifanyia kazi na ilimakaa shamba na kazi sijui fertilizer sijui na pia sijui beard oil ambia boss kuna hii ya jana ilikuja wacha nikusukumie. And you know, like the real the place where I get my haircut, the reason why I go there is because they develop a personal relationship with your care. You know, it's not a place where like unajua tu unanyolewa tu kichwa safi twende, but it's like, you know, how consistent have you been coming, what's your growth, and even the barber himself respects his work. You know, I feel like a lot of Kenyans don't really think that manze kinyozi heshimu kazi yake, lakini kinyozi wa Nairobi mtu wangu anaheshimu kazi yake.
Nairobi lazima heshimu kazi.
Anaheshimu kazi yake. So hiyo ndio mimi unibamba. Basically, even going bald, that was one thing that really helped me in terms of grooming. It's that I learned through being bald, I had to rediscover and reimagine how I could look.
And love yourself afresh, man. It's like a new relationship with a new person. You
know,
like I had an experience the other day when I was in the UK. I went to this guy who cut my hair with a razor. And it was brilliant because I got in, the razor was inside this blue liquid, assuming it's a sterilizer. And then he removed the blades, cut me up, put a warm towel on my head, and was like, and then put like some aftershave. And I was like, you're good to go. And I was like, wapi spirit? You know?
Wapi dego kulitwa shati.
Wapi spirit? I wanted the bare minimum, man. Like, wapi spirit? Nimelipa 20 pounds, maze. That boy told me, spirit inafaa kusterilize the object that's cutting you, not your head. So vinyozi wa huku hivi ni kwa shanga, mbona saa zingine nikinyolewa mazina kuna kichwa mbaya mbovu. Kumbe nizo maspiritual wanaekelea kwa kichwa, but I'm not sterilizing my head, you're sterilizing the blade. So anyway, guys, today we are here to discuss matters mental health. And like it's a topic that, you know, that affects us all on the panel today. And more so in men. I don't know if you can touch on mental health in women. I don't know if there's a specialist on this panel for that, but I think we'll just speak for men. because I don't want to speak for the other gender. Other genders.
Chunga sana.
Man.
Non-binary.
Yeah. So suicide. Why are suicide rates higher in men?
Oh, is that a question to me?
It is.
Well, for a myriad of reasons. One, a lot of societies across the world prohibit men from expressing their emotions. So there's a lot of rigidity about which men are supposed to express themselves. If a man is, say, stressed out, he's supposed to man up. So stoicism is encouraged in men. Remember
Eric,
how
what is stoicism?
you're supposed to be stoic.
Okay,
like man up.
stoic, like.
Yeah, yes.
All right.
Yes. So then when you are growing up from infancy, really, if a boy falls, you're supposed to grow up, you're a boy.
Yeah,
But a guy's like, come, mama. And so men are taught, and it's a thing I think we need to unlearn, to bottle things up.
Yeah.
So your girlfriend maligns you and talks to you like though you are an idiot and calls you names, and you're not supposed to react. All right? So any reaction will be deemed unmanly. So your place is supposed to be quiet. Your mother dies a horrendous death, and you're supposed to be quiet. Men are not supposed to show weakness by displaying things like tears. So I think that is in part what brings about the very disparities between how women show emotions and how men aren't supposed to show emotion. If a lady broke into tears right now, we'd rush to her. Her girlfriends would come and bring wine and embrace her. If I broke into tears, my friends would say, Eric, unakwaga weird. You just start crying like an idiot.
Eric, you've never cried next
So-
to me.
so
you
that-
never cried next to me, Eric. I'm a nice guy.
So let me give you a very personal example, and that person is not here. This friend of mine got into a breakup. He ended the relationship, but I think he ended it prematurely. So then he started getting hurt.
This
for
nigga is
having-
talking about me.
Yeah, me I'm feeling like this
started-
story. This story is a bit too relative.
He started getting hurt because he had ended it prematurely.
Yeah.
And he even started losing weight, man. This was serious.
I had nothing to lose.
And so, in an ideal situation, if that were happening in a
Yeah.
typical male setup, men would be like, "Can I buy you a drink?" They never would delve into what's happening to you, which is you feel you're grieving the loss of something important to you. Women wouldn't. They'd talk about it. They'd even insult the guy, even though the woman was in the wrong. Be like, "I always knew the guy was a monkey. You're better off without him." So I think we need to unlearn that and encourage men to express emotions, and maybe seek safe spaces amongst your friends where you could talk about even the most sensitive things. Like, you know what, I've just been told by the doctor that my tank is empty, I cannot give my wife a baby, and I'm stressed. And they shouldn't love and give you shots.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know? So I
Yeah.
think that's important.
Wow. You've used Mr. Oscar niambie sasa wakili.
Hey, Jamani. You know, you've taken that conversation in several directions. So I'll start with the Stoicism. So Stoicism is a philosophy by Marcus Aurelius in his edict, which is called Meditations. So Marcus Aurelius, for those who don't know, was one of the, considered, to me, at least with my understanding of the Roman Empire, one of the most consistent rulers of the Roman Empire at its height. Him and Augustus Caesar are similar. But anyway, let's not get into Marcus Aurelius. But the philosophy of Stoicism, which is we are supposed to be impervious to our surroundings because of the internal work that we do for ourselves and how we perceive the world. Now, a lot of people misunderstand that concept because it's taken us there. A lot of people misunderstand that concept to mean, kangumu. But what it actually means is do the internal work to be able to survive the external pressures of the world. That's what it actually means. But ukiambia watu kaa ngumu na umesoma stoicism page 3. Unajua utaanza kuchocha mtoto wako ati hey, don't cry when you're, like you said, like when your mother has died a horrendous death. One of the reasons why toxic masculinity one of the reasons why suicide is so high is, for me, an understanding of masculinity in society that is skewed and that is, if you ask me, extra. And when we started mantalk.ke, one of the pillars we rest the entire philosophy of how we pick topics and how we do the podcasting is we ask ourselves, okay, what aspect of positive masculinity is being touched? Because you can't, for every negative light that you shine on men, you take away the light from the positive men like Bien and you, Eric, who are actually... And Chaxi at the back.
Guys, Chaxi has hair, and so we have to edit that out.
Chaxi. So like for the men who are actually doing positive things in their life. So for us, that was like the philosophy is instead of kungangana toxic masculinity, focus more on the positive aspects of men and making them feel validated and that they themselves can be courageous enough to step into their lives knowing that there are other men just like them. So that has had a tremendous impact on our end because on our side as mantalk.ke, what we see is we are seeing a lot of young men resisting the entire narrative that ati lazima nikae ngumu zi nasikia kule antalia utadu unaona. So with the same kind of radical emotional aspect, we're seeing men take up the responsibility that they can as men in a community and at the same time take responsibility for being a part of the solution rather than the problem.
Oh wow! I also think like, by the way, thank you for your insights. Umesikia juu ya philosophies mpya leo. Mtume pesa kwa namba. But also I think there's an element of how we are brought up, and fatherhood is a big deal, and a lot of African men don't have a good relationship with their dads, and that has really also affected how they react towards life. Because Kangumu, man, when my dad lost it all, like my dad is like a story of Job, where at some point of his life, he lost everything. Ali Kangumu, maze, mi sikumuona akilia, ndiko tunamuona tu ame hold. Of course, kuna ile tension kwa haona juu jamaa amesota, but at the end of the day, like, he didn't quite express emotionally to any of us what he's going through. Like, hey, my kids, by the way, I'm going through some stuff right now, I'm looking for a job. No, he just used to send me with a CV every day to go to the post office to post, like to send out to different companies, you know, and every time he's getting replies for, we regret to tell you, we regret to inform you.
He carried that weight.
And he carried the weight. You know, my mom now at least opened up to us and told us, you guys, your dad is going through a hard time. But it wasn't my dad telling me that. And so even me, sometimes I have a difficult time expressing to my wife when I'm going through a hard time. There was a time when I just had anxiety attacks from out of nowhere. I couldn't go to even a restaurant because I just felt like, I don't know, for some reason, people are looking at me or what's happening, you know, like I just had anxiety. But I couldn't tell my wife I don't want to go to a restaurant because she wants to go on a date, you know. So
he's your wife.
I'm going there and I'm being awkward and I'm suffering in silence because that's all I saw. If those things build up, then we could get to a suicidal, you know, moment.
Yeah.
Or a place where you're just contemplating suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very important point you've mentioned, Bien. The psychologists say that only two relationships are identical: the ones you have with your parents and the ones you have with your partner, right? And so that if you grew up, for instance, let's talk about attachment styles. So you would be secure. You would inhabit secure attachment style if your parents were present, loving, reassuring, and even discussing things like your dad's case. So in a later life, if you get married, then you exhibit semblances of a secure attachment style. So you tell your wife, you know what, honey, I feel a bit anxious for the number of days. I think it's because of COVID or we've been holed up indoors for a very long time. Because you grew up seeing that and hearing that. Now there is avoidance where your parents were intermittent. They'd see you, lavish you with goodies for 3 weeks and then disappear for 9 months. So you take that into your adult relationship. All right. And then there's anxious avoidant, yada, yada, yada. So then again, we have to have a conversation as men about our upbringing.
Yeah.
Because we regurgitate what was passed on to us. And if you are ignorant about that, then you're like, this is the way I am, take me the way I am. But you're demented. That's what's happening right now. So,
yeah.
So if you recognize that you have challenges that you need to fix and your upbringing has a lot to do with how you are treating your partner, it makes the whole difference. My mother was very, she used to be you've met my mom, at least at the later stages of her life. She would get really upset very, very fast. But because she was a single mother, she was guarded and she'd use that anger to show you how fierce she was. But gently, in her quiet, she was very, recluse, very kept together. So I didn't know that until I became an adult. And I started, again, regurgitating that. I'd snap and get really upset and want to get very violent. because that's what I saw growing up. So if you realize that you can hand people better than what you're dealt, then you're in a far much better position as an adult male to then confront some of these mental health challenges.
Yeah.
What are your views on therapy, guys?
Now that's actually what I was going to take the conversation.
All right.
That was actually what I was going to, because you talked about anxiety concerns like in your marriage and in your relationship, and he talked about upbringing and the value that brings to us as men, especially if you come from a home that's not necessarily had the best kind of background in terms of being I don't know what the word would be, a fully functioning person in society today, able to express their potential to the fullest. I don't know what the word is for that, but I think that men also need to consider that you also have to take responsibility for your mental health. You have to take responsibility for the environments that you've grown up in and the habits that you've kind of created and the cycles that you're living in. And the only way you can be able to do that, to really understand yourself, is by going through therapy and by actually going to seek professional guidance as to how you can live your life. Because at the end of the day, as a man, we also have that pressure to perform in society. So how is it that we are not given the tools due to, let's say, our upbringing or the fact that we have not been exposed to certain environments, and we've developed different attachment styles? How are we supposed to achieve success in a way that is meaningful to us? The only way we can do that is by actually seeking the professional help that we need to get the tools that we require so that we can be able to succeed in society today. Because society today is remarkably complex. As men, like I said, there's a pressure to perform. Then there's this whole narrative that all men are toxic. So there's certain uncolored lines that you can't cross. Then on top of that, in the office, you yourself are comparing yourself with your peers. There's our competitive nature. Then you're seeing, like just that entire environment which we men are supposed to sustain ourselves, especially in this city. Mlimba kuhusu Nairobi. Sitasema bien. Mlimba.
But also like when I think about it, from the inception of the human race, we always try to figure out the human anatomy based on the body. And when you figure out the body, like, we've done everything, man. We've advanced clinically to a place where we can heal any disease in the world. But we forgot to work on the internal. And where we are coming from, if you look at the human race, maybe I'd say 5,000 years ago, the internal was fine because we didn't quite have the issues we have right now to have mental health issues. Like, I don't have a job. Why? Because you woke up in the morning and you were one with nature. And when you're one with nature, actually, you're in a good mental state. So, like, I also feel like as we grow as a civilization, we will now grow also into understanding the mental health aspect of life. Because you can have all the money, but you don't have good mental health. You can have no money and have bad mental health still because you don't have money. And society has been built around capitalism.
Nah, you've taken it there again. Like, so society previously was egalitarian, meaning everything was shared.
Yeah,
that's the word that's the word we're looking for. So an egalitarian. So
hapa leo nenye ni lecture.
But like, so there's a book called how can I forget it now? Dr. Yuval Noah Harari wrote, has written 2 books. *Sapiens. Good. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Chucksy at the back. So,
guys, for those of you who don't know Chucksy, he's a bald guy.
So in that book, he says that, human beings grew up in an egalitarian society where everything was shared, including spouses.
Nilisema hiyo kitu jana hapa.
Including spouses. And so a lot of the stuff that we are seeing today in terms of resource allocation, like poverty, conceptually, poverty is simply a symptom of misallocation of resources. That we have not been able to equitably allocate resources to people who are in need of them simply because they don't have certain skills. And because now our entire society is based on capitalism, which is money in exchange for goods and services, there are some people who, because of a lack of an education, they won't be able to receive that same level of access. So as men, and as society has continued to grow, we've found ourselves getting, like you're saying, the mental illnesses that are associated with a dysfunctional society simply because we wired society a certain way. We got it wrong somewhere.
So we have to unlearn these things.
So we have to unlearn these things. So you're very right.
But even more than communism, or Jamaa as Tanzanians would call it, there is, about 40, 60 years ago, roles were clearly defined so that a man would go and bring home the bacon, the woman would cook the bacon.
Okay.
Now women own pig pens and all manner of things. A woman now has a car and a house and a table and all the bacon in the fridge.
Okay.
And so the dynamics shift. So the man keeps asking himself,
What is my role?
What's in it for me? What am I doing? All right.
What are you bringing to the table?
And now she has the table and things on it, and she doesn't quite really need you to be working, so you have to bring another thing.
Yeah.
So
Do you think that affects relationships? Do you think that is a major cause of suicide? Like, people are not just able to watch our feminine counterparts succeed. You have a spouse who's making 3 times what you make, and it's just causing an imbalance in your relationship, in your home.
I think it's really, I wouldn't blame the woman. I would blame the man. Mostly men.
I'm not blaming the woman.
No, I know. I'm just saying, because a lot of people like to say that, some women have made money and have had a big head. I think men need to introspect and need to have some sort of self-awareness. What is it that makes you a man? Is it the car you drive? Is it the 4 jobs you have and the tax index or the index bracket that you belong to? Then if you start introspecting and really going deeper into the values and your essence as a man, then you'd be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, I think.
That's a fantastic answer.
So women are confused because men don't know what they want. Men are confused because they put their worth with the biggest machine the next man is driving and the one they are lacking. So if you are grounded and you do the difficult work of self-introspection and seeing what it is you're made of as a man and what it is that defines your manhood, then we can have better conversations. Wow. Self-awareness is very important.
Self-awareness, it is.
Did you say?
Exhaust history of suicide.
Kabla to move, you've touched on something that's very interesting because a lot of men like to, that thing, ukitumuuliza ukisema ati mademo anapata 1 2 3 so mi kachali na feel 1 2 3 your argument doesn't make sense kwangu. Because first of all, you have to understand you have a head start in history simply by the fact that you're a man. You have a clear head start.
Yeah.
Patriarchy.
We spoke about that yesterday, man. Patriarchy has to be abolished.
Yeah,
it must die.
Yeah, so you have a clear head start. You have a clear head start against the women who are in society today. Women society today are only beginning to achieve their full potential. We have to put in as a world and as the legal system in the world right now, conventions on eradication against discrimination against women. We've had to actually write it down.
Imagine.
Only juzi tu ni katiba mpya ndio imefanya women can now inherit property.
Yes.
Ni katiba mpya. So like you can't sit down there as a guy and then you start telling me that your confidence issues are coming from seeing someone else or the woman in your life succeed. It has to be, like he said, an introspective question. What definitions have you put on yourself as a man? So that's just my take, and thank you for saying that.
Hey, fantastic. Actually, guys, by the way, we've been going all over the questions that I had prepared, but we've been touching them in bits. So like I'll ask them again, and then we can just now do a deeper delve.
Okay.
A deeper dive in all of them. The second one is about gender-based violence. As you know, like right now, man, GBV is on an all-time high, especially during COVID. Because now you had to be with your spouse in the crib.
Yeah.
GBV, I'd say, goes both ways, but of course, the scale is tipping to the side of women, where men have been extremely violent towards women.
Inequitable. Oh, sorry, you're still continuing.
Oh no, I was gonna ask.
Oh, okay.
How can men effectively hold other men more accountable in such issues?
I'm learning the way, but with a lot of shock, actually, I must add that the older you grow, I used to think that peer pressure was only rampant when somebody is in primary school or maybe high school. But now I'm getting a rude awakening that even grown adults in their 40s and 50s, men and women alike, have a lot of peer pressure. And I would lay blame in part to peer pressure.
Gender-based violence?
Yeah.
All right.
Peer pressure. And then also culture.
So, please, break it down for me, Eric. Peer pressure and GBV.
Zinaanaje?
Wewe umepiga bibi yako, so mimi nakupiga bibi yangu ama.
No. So this is how it comes. Yeah. So
Ama ngoja bibi yako amekuchapa, so pia mimi nichapwe kwangu.
So you see the way you'd be hanging out in a bar, and then every guy talks about maybe how a monster in the sack is. You know, like he's a Mandigo warrior. He chokes his woman, and his woman loves it. So the thing is this. There is pressure in... She was talking back at me, and I slapped her mouth. Then the guy goes like, give me another beer. Agnes will see today. So, and then after that slap, she kept quiet. She's never, ever talked. Then you go and beat your wife.
Yeah.
Also, there is inequitable gender norms, so that a woman in most African cultures is seen as subservient, which again is an uncomfortable conversation that people don't like having, but they have it, hush hush. So a woman is seen as somebody. I mean, you hear conversations around men saying things like, mwanamke atumiagi akili. Wamama wanakuaga hivyo.
Uko na umama.
Uko na umama, right?
But guys, never say uko na umama ever.
Yeah, so the thing is this. Again, in my mind, it comes from lack of understanding that we are different, but we are the same. We are allies. Women are stronger waist down, men are stronger waist up. Women express emotions, whether they communicate through emotions most of the time. Men try to communicate logically. Mm-hmm. These are just our differences. So if we understood the differences and maybe understood that she's speaking to me, that behind every criticism is a wish and not so much that she disrespects me, then you'd hold back from, throwing a fist. But again, a lot of it, I would say, comes largely from ignorance. We are very ignorant about how each of our sexes operates. I keep telling my girlfriends that you can be right and wrong at the top of your voice when you're dealing with a man. All right? And I keep telling my male friends that anything expressed to a woman when it lacks love, don't say it. She will not hear it. Mm-hmm. Women understand anything if you lace it with love. Mm-hmm. If you remove love out of it, she's never going to hear you. She'll say you hate her, you don't love her. Men cannot hear you when you don't lace your words with respect.
Respect.
Wow.
Respect.
Right?
Yeah.
So those are just some of the dynamics. And again, it emanates from lack of understanding. So we speak poorly to our wives, then they bark at us, then you disrespect me. Because you can't match up a level of...
There's a lack of love and a lack of respect.
Lack of respect, so causes a lot of tension.
Yeah.
So that's the basic of it. But a lot of it has to do with culture. Most of it does with, as I was saying, peer pressure. But the bigger chunk in my mind is ignorance. We need to educate ourselves about how
but
we
when you speak of ignorance, I know like guys who are professors, guys who are like accomplished, made men in academia, in sophistication, in all of these things that we look at.
Not bad.
And they're still like trying to slap their cheeks.
I'm not talking about education, because education, most people are educated, but they're not learned. I'm talking about understanding the ABCs of how a woman works. All right?
Hey, Eric, you've read the book Understanding Women?
No, I haven't.
How do you know the ABCs?
No. I mean, I'm not saying women or men are homogeneous.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's case specific. So if I'm dating Pamela, for instance, there are generalities around stereotypes about ways in which women act. So if a woman is peeved, so let me give you a fantastic example. So most men believe, if you sat in a bar again, that they're all serious in bed. They are monsters in the sack. But if you zero it down to the differences sexually between men and women, then you start realizing men will scamper because they know very little. A lot of women have never achieved the big O. Somebody asked on Twitter the other day, if you're a lady, what is the one thing you'd want a man to know about you in bed? And they went dissing men about how they have to pretend around the big O. And the differences are as simple as this in my mind. So the first thing, for instance, women need comfort, all right, and the surrounding to be presentable for them to enjoy sex. Just one of the things. Men can have sex in a dark alley. That's when the lights go off. The guy's like, babe, babe, babe. And the chick is like, stop. Because the surrounding is not conducive for her. Men don't know that. They think women are like them. Babe, just quickly, 2 minutes. That has the last one. You know, all right? And then the other difference is, now, if you take that difference, for instance, so you've not paid for your electricity, all right? And you want to get lucky. She's thinking the circumstances and the surrounding do not permit for me to even get ready for this situation. You're thinking, you are my wife. And look, I have a boner. Let's get it on. There's a mismatch.
Yeah.
It's going to bring about some discomfort and then a fight would ensue. He doesn't understand her. She can't, for the love of God, understand how he wants to have sex in such
such
precarious
conditions.
conditions.
Eric,
and then the problem is,
allow me to reel in the conversation towards GBV. And then we will address.
But that can cause like gender.
I hear you.
Because you can slap her because she refused you sex.
I hear you.
But you don't understand the mind behind her refusal.
I understand. I understand like the mindset. Obviously, the fact that there are physiological and psychological differences between men and women, even in the area of sex, and how we react to stress and how we react to different environments. Now, for the question of GVV, which I think let me address that, and then we can unpack the sex part, because I've never actually sat on a podcast and unpacked the sexual aspect. So I know anyone who's like a Man Talk fan will want to hear my views on that. So let's start with the GBV thing. So our encounter with gender-based violence as a podcast for us happened after a rather tragic incident that happened on radio. So that time we weren't a big platform. We hadn't even reached, I think, 2,000 guys who were listening to our content. So we were just doing it because we knew that it would have impact somewhere down the road. Yeah. But that group of 2,000, and if you go back to our page, you can find we did an entire expose on it. Came to us and said, we don't think you'll be true to what you say you do unless you actually do the work to teach us about this thing. And that was a very challenging time because at that time, Eli wasn't in the country. He had just flown out. And at the same time, the story and the personalities around what had just happened on radio was so huge. Because, for me, I'm Kenyan born and raised. Me nimelelewa Sauti. So these are people who I've grown up admiring. So I'm like, okay, how can I give value to the people who listen to us and educate them about this issue? Like you said, one of the biggest problems with gender-based violence is that not enough men sit down and talk about the issue. So we basically gatekeep the information. Men are gatekeepers. Beyond the fact that we're going to have this conversation with you, it means that millions of other men at home are going to watch it. Yeah. So they're going to think about it. So they're going to do the work required to learn about it. So first thing I discovered was that there's actually a ministry and a government agency for gender. Okay. That's something we not many men know, but it exists. And they've done extensive research on the subject of gender-based violence. Talk to me. Most of us understand that gender-based violence is just about, physical violence, but there's economic gender-based violence. The fact that women don't have the right to property, they don't have the right to form unions, and there are actually communities in this country where women cannot cannot have an education simply because they need to get married first. That's a form of gender-based violence because, again, it attacks...
It cripples your future.
Exactly. It attacks the future that this specific gender are going through because it's attacking them as a gender. It classifies them and it takes away certain rights from them. And as people who... The definition of gender-based violence is varied. UN Women have a very interesting definition, which I don't want to say on camera in case I get it wrong, of course. Mini wakili jo lazima nichunge. But anything that harms someone psychologically, emotionally, physically, economically is a form of gender-based violence. In the office,
question,
giving someone
go.
I
have a question.
Yeah.
So you're saying a guy can be like, yo, me, I don't beat up my chick. I'm trying to, justify that because you don't beat up your girlfriend, you're a nice guy.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, if you're being emotionally abusive to her, then that's also gender-based violence.
Exactly.
Okay, I've learned something new today.
There you see.
Even financial abuse. And you know, Wakili, why I was going to the basics of it,
Yeah.
I feel like before it escalates to levels of either physical or verbal abuse,
There are signs.
there are many signs, but it's outgone, it's gone way past the signs.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying something as simple as our ways of communication
Yeah.
can escalate into a fist.
Exactly.
Or into a very serious argument.
Yeah.
Or even verbal abuse because we lack understanding.
Exactly.
So we do not know how men are wired. Like if somebody says, I'll think about it, and the woman wants the answer now, and she doesn't understand that while thinking about it, that's how he processes information.
Yeah, he needs time.
Yeah, he needs time.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying in terms of like that understanding in gender differences. But I also want you to recognize that there is research and statistics on this issue. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And as a government and as a society, we're not really doing enough to educate ourselves and teach ourselves about this. Because ask yourself this. Do you know another statistic I found while doing research on that problem was that the occasion of GBV, like somebody hitting a woman in a relationship, increases the chances of death by over 80%. Like, think about that. Like, once it happens once in a marriage or a relationship, according to the research that we read that day, once it happens, the chances of a fatality happening due to gender-based violence in that same home is over 80%. Basically, your chances of an accident today statistically are 33.5%. 33 and a third. So the moment you strike your chick in a relationship, you've increased her chances of death higher than an accident on the road today. Think about that. Like just
niggas, check yourselves, bro.
Like when I did the math, like when you actually do the research, you'll find that this problem is a crisis. It's not
I appreciate
it's
that.
not a I don't like I don't at all. I don't trivialize the issue at all. And even on Man Talk, we are so careful with the issue of GBV because we want real expertise discussing how can we contribute as a platform.
But I appreciate where you're coming from, and there's a place for that expertise talking about it. But then when it comes to an Eric and a Bien and friends hanging out in a barber shop, we must have that conversation. I read a report, I think World Health Organization said that 1 in every 3 women globally has undergone abuse under their partners, or whatever. 1 in 3. That's crazy. Wow. So it's important that we talk about. One time I was hanging out with my friends, about 7 of them, all male. And then I said, you see, nobody's going to judge you, man. Let's be honest. How many of you have shoved a chick, slapped a chick, kicked a chick, abused a chick? And everybody was just like, me included. So while I understand the place for experts talking about it, it's equally important that we bring the conversation down to the average everyday man. And so that they understand the heinousness that is GBV, what it does to the woman, and what it is. Because many men would not argue that something in their mind as innocuous as silent treatment is abuse. So you're with a woman in the house, your wife or your girlfriend, and then you don't talk to her. That's
it's fair.
Tantamounts to
it's fair.
A form of abuse.
The place where I feel, where at least my opinion, independent of research and independent of the research we did to kind of understand what gender-based violence is in this country, is I found that men struggle a lot with accountability. Like we know that there are political leaders out here who have been, smacking people. So like with the whole situation, men really struggle because we understand hierarchies completely in society. We have a clear understanding of who's who, who's dominant, who's where. And as long as the people who we consider to be at the top don't treat the issue with the seriousness that it deserves, as long as we continue to maintain negative traditional, not positive traditional norms, negative traditional norms that tell us that as men we have the right to physically, sexually, economically abuse the women in our society, not just our wives but our sisters. When suddenly there's an inheritance question, and then suddenly your sister who went to study real estate akasoma mpaka PhD, now she can't run the family assets all of a sudden. Those minor those normified biases that we have as men, the only way we can remove that, in my opinion, is by we men holding each other accountable irrespective of what you have achieved in this life. Like we have to go like, I don't think that what you're doing is right, and I don't think you deserve to be in a position of leadership or to be in a position where you get to tell me what to do with my work or with my relationships, as long as you keep doing that thing that you're doing. Because men, we respect power and hierarchy. Like if we get somebody like, Bien, who's been so kind enough to create this platform where we can talk about these issues like this, where we're saying there's a no tolerance policy for GBV in society today. I think that's a very clear-cut way of getting rid of the issue in the next generation. Yeah. Because suddenly you'll have developed an influence over people's minds and thinking. Where they're like, Bien is cool, Bien makes music that I enjoy, I want to keep enjoying his music. He thinks that GBV is wrong. This guy saying he's running for president, he wants my vote. What are his views on GBV? When you start holding leaders accountable like that, even in their homes, things change.
Even more, I agree 100%, but even more, your life is the weight of your words, Yeah. So, because any politician would stand and say, GBV Mbaya, and then be like, hey. So then, we also need to create space for somebody to come around and own up to their malevolence. Say, look, I am guilty of having done this heinous thing against my wife, and it's classified under GBV, and I plead the fifth. Maybe I was ignorant, I was drunk, and these are the consequences of my action. I am happily able to trust such a man than the one who just stands and say, if we create spaces for ownership and say, look, I am unlearning a lot of habits, some of which in my upbringing, which were toxic. All right. Oof. And unfortunately, I've had them meted against my lovely wife or my girlfriend. But upon knowing better, boyfriend, I'm now doing better. Because a lot of people hide behind the carpet because they are perpetually doing these things. Nobody calls them out. As you're saying, they're in positions of authority. And nobody has been meek enough to come out and say, you know what, as a man, this is what I used to do. These are the effects of what I used to do, and this is the path I've chosen now.
I have a question for both of you. If I'm in a friendship with... If one of my friends is in a GBV case where he is, not the victim, but the perpetrator, like, what do you advise me to do?
My approach is very ruthless. So you might...
Because you're a lawyer.
My approach is... Because it's... My guy... The consequences of gender-based violence on the physical and mental health of someone and their networks, because you have to understand that we are all connected. Okay, so you don't know how that person has been lashing out towards other people in their life.
It's like COVID, man. Yeah, you pass it on.
Yeah, you're passing it on.
Bad vibes.
Yeah, that's energy that I wouldn't recommend to be around me. It would depend on the person and the position at which they're coming to me from. Like, are they coming to me because I caught them in the act without them volunteering that information, telling me, bro, by the way, I'm struggling with this thing? Then we can now say, okay, first of all, I recommend that you separate yourself from that person because you're causing harm in their lives. You're taking away from someone's potential, someone's actual lifespan, and you're pouring your issues onto them, because instances of violence against another human being are mainly, from my observations, again, my humble observations, because of your own internal experiences and frameworks and your own lack of an understanding of how to process them. So how you're processing whatever it is you're going through is so negative that it's affecting the person you want to actively love in your life. Like, see how paradoxical that situation is. This is someone who you love utterly and completely, enough to be with them in a relationship.
Or not.
Okay, there's that probability. But then you're...
Prophet of doom.
But then here you are, you're just putting in instances of violence. You're instantiating, your trauma on them. Why not separate yourself? Find the professional help that you need. Yeah. And like, for me as your friend, if that's the path we are walking, then we will walk. I will give you my support. But what I will not support is a guy who's doing it akibro walai. Manze nilifanya tena jana, shots. Hey. you're missing that time.
Yeah.
Also, beyond misery loves company. I mean, any guy who's confident to slap or beat on their wife in a pack of friends, a big chance is those friends do the same thing. All right? But because if they weren't doing the same thing, he probably wouldn't. Remember the conversation I was having about peer pressure. Men, for some reason, easily ape other men. They don't know it, they would not admit it. But if I see somebody carrying themselves in a way that was indecorous, and I was comfortable, chances are I do that, and that is something we do as a pack. So how I'll deal with it, a friend of mine does something wonderful. So when they go to bars and any of his friends comes with their car, he leaves the bar. He just says, we discussed this. I'm not going to drink with you, then you drive home. So I'll just leave. You can go kill yourself by your own self, but this party has ended. And so if his friends want to hang out with him, they know to take a taxi. All right? Whatever you
Tolerate.
permit persists. Whatever you punish ceases. So I will punish it.
All right.
There's just to take it back slightly, because you asked that question and the back of my mind was doing a math of what instances are there of where people who have had like a tragic history or a history that is, whether it's racial abuse, and then had to unlearn those patterns of behavior and also had to establish, new patterns of behavior that are more positive. And the one social solution that I saw was South Africa's Reconciliation Commission. So you can imagine having gone through apartheid for all those years.
Even genocide, they have a reconciliation thing.
Even genocide in Rwanda. Yes, they had that Reconciliation Commission. If the crisis continues to persist as it does, for those who don't know, Reconciliation Commissions are where parties present cases where they were harmed, and the accused comes and presents a counter case, where basically an argument as to what really happened, and then the Truth and Reconciliation Commission discovers the truth as to what happened and offer the truth to the victim. And then now the person who instantiated the harm is either given a sentence or is like told to own up towards that mistake. And for a lot of those people, that's a lot of justice. Because you can imagine someone who saw abuse in the apartheid era does not expect to ever be given justice for the death or reparations for the loss of their husbands. So things like that, where we are actively acknowledging that this is an isolated situation that's going on in our society today, and we need to, come up with a forum where we give the healing that our society requires. Otherwise, this is a problem that will continue to perpetuate.
Actually, I like the healing bit. I like the healing bit a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, as we were continuing,
tulikuwa tunaendanga.
so tulikuwa tukiendelea maze therapy. How should we go about it? How can someone know the state of their mental health? And what's the average cost of therapy? Like, how much does it cost?
Good question.
Yeah. First of all, does any of you get any form of therapy right now?
Not right now.
Okay, may I go for therapy?
So
but mine is not therapy, actually. It's a life coach session.
I think also just to demystify what therapy is, because there's a lot of cloud around it. And a typical African man, at least in my circle, shuns it and thinks that it's something that is very Western and something very foreign. But I like to liken it to the way you service your car. You don't know everything.
Yeah.
You don't know everything. It's the same way people get into marriages without knowing anything. You just looked at her hips and you walked her down the aisle. But then now, maybe she snores at night and you have to deal with that because you have to wake up early in the morning and go to work. So I would strongly advocate for seeing a therapist. In terms of costs, if you can't afford it, I'm sure the government facilities I've read online that offer therapy in hospitals and that sort of a thing. But prior to that, just coming to the place of self-awareness where you know that you have a challenge. Because nothing changes until you change. So if you understand that I have a challenge, interesting story, I was dating this woman, we broke up. And she used to accuse me of said things, let's say 3 things. So after a year, I started dating somebody else who started accusing me of these 3 things. So I was like, these women know each other, right? But the truth of the matter was, I had serious issues in those 3 areas.
Yeah.
So after this second relationship ended, I had to sit down with myself with a pen and a paper and say,
Call
okay,
yourself for a
fine.
meeting.
Eric, you have a challenge. And I had to confront those challenges.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to recognize that you are not perfect and your wife or girlfriend is not always mad. Chances are the things she's complaining about are real things that you need to have a deep look into. Yes, you are prodigal with money and you're a perennial masturbator. Deal with those things. So then, don't start calling a mad. You are the one with the problem. So after you acknowledge and accept that, okay, I struggle with
These
my
things.
fingers.
I don't know why you look
I
at me,
cannot
bro.
stand my fingers. Then you go to a sex therapist who will tell you, okay, fine, this is how you're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know enough to come out of that problem you're in.
Yeah, you need to have the tools too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me go on therapy. Will you allow me, Bien?
Yes, please.
So, first thing, I've noticed a lot of universities are taking very progressive measures. So if you're watching this and you're young, and you're going through stuff, and the main question you're having is there a way, is there a center I can go to and get the care that I need? So I know that shout out Strathmore Law School. I know that Strath has seriously subsidized the cost of psychiatric care in the school. It costs around between 200 to 500, I think, a session. As I heard from someone who follows Mantalk and has been asking me about these same questions. I know that there are so many institutions that are giving subsidized mental health care now, because it's become a point of focus in this part of Africa because of the alarming suicide rates and the fact that we are the hardest hit. I don't care what anyone says. We are the hardest hit economically, socially, physically by COVID. It is us. There is no one in the world should tell you which other country. It is Africa as a continent. We're the ones who are suffering the most. So I know there's a lot of funding that's going to mental guys who offer psychiatric care that should be going to underprivileged Africans. So I suggest that we take the initiative to find those pages and find the help that you need. If you can't find that there, DM maybe some of us, our platforms, just hit me up on Mantalk and I'll try my best to see where we can align you. I know I'm saying this to a lot of people, but please, mpange orderly queue to saidiane. Bien, hopefully we'll set up something so that you can be able to do that.
Please, I just don't put it on me. I won't set up anything, but I'll support whatever existing structures there.
Because
I just don't have the admin. But if also like you have any initiatives that help,
zieke kwa comments.
Tufuatilia manzi.
Tufuatilia. Zieke kwa comments. Kama uko na hospitali, you know how to help guys, please put in the comments. And like Eric said, remove the stigma from seeking mental health care as a guy and as a society. It's crazy how as a society we are going through. Ni kama uko na malaria na umeamua utatingika tu kwa kitanda. It makes sense.
Unajua tukiwa USIU mazee, there were a lot of students studying psychology, and it was such a mystery to me. Like I even took like 2 psychology courses because my minor was in integrated studies. I took 2 psychology courses just to understand what's happening in that field. And bado nilitoa kama sijaelewa. But all I can say is, man, like I see psychiatrists to be the dentists of the future, because all other forms of like medics are slowly being automated, slowly being like the machine can do it for you. But this is the one area where you need to find a human being who has a high understanding of themselves to help you get out of your rut. So like wherever you are, like if you're listening to this show right now, make sure that you are giving yourself positive mental health vibes, positive vibes. One thing hatujaongea hapa, by the way, guys, the biggest therapy in the world is music. So if you analyze your life properly, the time when you're listening to the most amount of music, I think your soul is more at peace. And the music dictates also how you're going to feel. So if you wake up in the morning and you're listening to a song about guns and whatever, then that energy also should be translated to you gunning your job, not people. Like you need to focus on protecting your energy, and the best way of doing that is through music and through content. Like just watch stuff that is elevating.
Hey, used our buzzword, my guy.
Yeah.
Mantalk.ke, honest and elevating conversations. Mantalk.ke, honest and elevating
conversations. Yes. Hey, we are about to speak on something here called marriage counseling.
Hey. Sijaoa.
How important is it?
Sijaoa.
Wewe
Bien,
nyamaza.
sijaoa.
Hata huyo hajaoa. Wacheni niwaambie sasa mimi nimeoa 1 year.
Sema.
I've been married 18 months. You know how Chile's count, bro.
Kila month. Kila
This is
siku.
my 18th month.
Which hour is it? Chicken hour? 13 hours and 22 minutes.
Actually, 2 hours and 40 minutes. We got married at 9 o'clock. But you see, I'm a nice guy because I know. But marriage counseling, I think, is in the same zone I would put therapy. In my first year of marriage, I almost got a divorce, man. It was crazy because I was just in a point where I was in a pandemic. I was having a lot of mental health issues because of my career just being taken away from me, or just me thinking that my career has been taken away from me. And I was dealing with that shit in the craziest way. I put it all on my relationship. And also my wife was coming from a side where she was also going through a transition in her business. And so she also didn't have the tools to deal with that transition. So we met like at the apex of our egos. And we went to see a not a psychiatrist. This first guy was not a psychiatrist. He's a counselor, but he came from a very Christian background. And he listened to both of us speaking. So of course I went there and I was super fired up. Like, who's going to start? Of course my wife was like, so wanze, wendo umesema tukuje hapa. And I started, like I said, my piece. And I actually started the conversation by saying, I want you to tell me how is the quickest way I can leave this marriage. Because right now I feel like I live in a cage. I feel like I don't have my life anymore. I feel like marriage has taken everything away from me that was innately bien. And it was a very hurtful thing for me to say in front of my wife. But that guy, after listening to Chiki and listening to me, concluded that this gentleman is bipolar. So I'm going to put him on some medicine to stabilize him. I'll be honest, I'm not bipolar, guys. Please, I've done like tests. And maybe I have mild ADHD. But if I was bipolar, I wouldn't be able to work with the number of people that I work with. I run an organization. Okay, I know people who are running organizations at top level. But I wasn't bipolar. He just misdiagnosed me for it. And I think now that I am more introspective, I was in a bad place.
Alipatana na BN mkali.
But hatuna BN mwenye ako in a bad place. Thereafter, we got help from now our life coach, who is life coach / our counselor and business coach as well, And it's been such a beautiful moment. I've learned to appreciate my wife afresh. I'm doing a lot of new things that I wasn't doing
Chiki
before.
umse anasema hizi vitu kuzuko hapa. Chiki umse anasema.
Anasema tu so like I'm now working with my wife on my day-to-day stuff, like this whole setup and this podcast. She's very instrumental in the team. And I think counseling is not for, all I can say about counseling is it's not for the bad times, even the good times. Because yesterday I learned something from Mike Washira, who was sitting right next to me. He said, like, time flies so fast when you're in marriage. Like the other day, it was my wedding. Today it's 18 months. It's going to be 18 years. It's going to be 10 years. And time just flies. So you should make time for counseling and make it as often as you can afford, just to make sure that you're growing together.
Nimechukua hizo words.
Umesikia wewe?
Utanitafuta? Bien. Unajua bado mimi sijadanganywa.
Lakini unajua huyu ni the high priest of single brothers. So wewe ka huko.
No, not really. I love marriage and what it entails. Chiki, you know that, don't you?
Me, as you can tell, I'm the young guy on set. Me, I'm set to enjoy. Enjoy. Kabla I say.
Wacha nikwambie tu kweli.
Niambie.
You set yourself up for failure.
Kwa nini?
Because you're living your life at the optimum, at the best. I don't know. What I can say is you're running an operation that's successful. Your mind is in the right place. And that's the trap. When they see that, they won't let you prosper. Huyu jamaa by the end of next year atakuwa ameoa. Sikudanganyi.
Nani mimi?
Mademu wana watch. Huyu jamaa mtamwacha ende hivyo?
Haiwezi. Haiwezi.
Lakini nakuambia pia upate dem fiti. Na upate dem anakupatia peace na wewe pia ukue peace yake.
nakusikia
50-50
imani lakini mnakusho mlimba hiyo wimbo mlimba watu
nimeenda Nigeria unaweza enda Burundi kama Polycarp soulmate anapatikana anywhere in the world sasa kuna Facebook kuna IG kuna DM Baldwide yeah,
Baldwide nakusikia.
When unsure about the state of your mental health, how do you go about it and who do you go to? I think we've spoken about the therapy side of it.
Yeah, but that's also a support system. You know, like we wanze mimi nilelewa na vijana wa Sauti Sol wenye tumebebana tangu tukue nursery mse. Like hakuna kitu siwezi ambia wa maboy. And you know like at least kwa Mantok you know siongea Kiswahili sana kwa sababu ni mwenzangu anakuanga mtu wa London.
Uko unajua yani yuko niko mababi.
Uko ni ubabini. Lakini nililelewa Sauti Sol. So hiyo inamaanisha wala wasi nililelewa nao tangu nikoe as in way imagine kutoka nursery. The greatest success of my life ilikuwa Raima. Hizi KCP nilinyorosha ikalala. Gazeti mbaya. Gazeti page 1.
Hey! So ulibebwa hivi by the way?
Nilibebwa mbaya. So hiyo success ya Raima alafu nikaenda secondary and in secondary I like had because of the change of environment nilienda bush. It was really tough to adjust. Boy wa Nairobi umeenda umeka sana wase unajua it was also hard to adjust lakini maboy yangu wa Sauti tumekuwa tu hivi hivi nikaingia campo Strath nikasema nitafanya law nilikuwa msewa biz nilikuwa napenda kufanya 2-3 kuza matiko kwenda my events. That support system wameniona nikiingia law school nikimada law school wameona mamanzi wangu wote. There's a level of accountability and love yenye inatokanga from my brothers. Unaelewa, and also coming from a family yenye is also very stable and very open that I can talk about these things. I feel like kama mabro kama mnaweza ka home tu mshauriane jo usione mmoja wako ameanza ameingia mihadarati mapema ameingia huko kwa mihadarati alafu manze amepotea huko ndani na nyinyi tu mnamwatch ati Jonte ningoi tena leo I get what I'm saying like you have to be your brother's keeper. Yeah. So hiyo ndio mimi nililearn na kasingekuwa na hiyo support ya wase nikiwa youth. Walai hiyo success yenyewe unasema na run operation na naona business venye naiona. Singekuwa na hiyo ujanja. Cause wale wase wenye tulikuwa tuna hustle nao kuza tiko za rev. Ndio majamaa sasa tunatafuta biashara nao, tunatafuta mabibi nao.
Mnatafuta mabibi. Safi. Eriko maze niambie about
even more than having friends, and you're so lucky because male friendships are very weird to me, you know, because they're very peripheral, they're very surface based. I enjoy very what would I call it? I enjoy camaraderie with very few men than I do women. Yeah. Because men don't dig deep. It's very how you you know, and more than having good friends, and you're lucky to have them, I think a bigger chunk of work must be done on the individual, you, because people will change, and you cannot always mark up your traits in accordance to what people are doing. Some friend of yours who you were in nursery school with can decide to marry 4 wives, for instance. And that then cannot be your true north, okay? So I think a lot of work, again, mostly on men's part, must be done on the person, you as an individual. What's your true north? What do you want? All right? Does that thing you want make you sleep better at night? If the answer to that question is yes, then oftentimes life and the universe is beautiful. It sends people who are like-minded your direction in friendships or associations and so on and so forth. So Bien likes to call me and tell me, you keep to yourself a lot, you will hang yourself in the house.
He will stay in his house. Eric will stay in his house and read books for months.
Oko serious.
Walai.
Miezi tu una
Eric anaweza mka asubuhi a train aende kwa nyumba asome vitabu aende job arudi afanye podcast yake alale na afanye hiyo routine with discipline. For actually I'm not about
Huyu sasa ndio hata single one.
I'm single. Lakini asini nimeona Eric akiwa na hiyo discipline ya kukaa kwa nyumba, lakini sasa zingine lazima nimpigie as brother yake nimuulize, bro, umejinyonga? How many times have I asked you that? It's a joke, but it's also not a joke. It's like, bro, are you okay?
In fact, they say isolation is one of the biggest signs of
suicide. Yeah, man. Don't go
but
there,
the truth
man.
is,
so the thing is this, in my mind,
there's strength in solitude.
When you've grounded yourself and you know what makes you tick, then you're not highly likely to be swayed to the left or to the right. All right. I mean, I get invitations to a whole lot of things, and I can just decide the things that will add on to me or those that remove from me. And then I either respond positively or negatively towards those invitations. But seldom do men especially do the tough work of introspection and deciding what they want. A guy can be hanging out at home, watching his TV, eating with his wife, the phone rings, a random dude calls and says, hey, do you want to fika our Westie? Then he goes. It wasn't in his plan. He doesn't feel like it. But just as a street creds, he has to go because he'll be a simp, right? If he doesn't go. So I have a problem with a lot of male relationships because of that.
Maybe because, just to bounce off of what you've said, because Eric, I find your mind very interesting as well.
Interesting is an interesting one.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So in the sense that there was a phase in my personal life where I was similar, in the sense that I had not yet met, obviously I have my Sauti crew, but I was entering a new level, and I had not yet met people who could take me to that next stage. Unaelewa? Kuna kale ka phase. I don't know I can because I'm quite young, so I don't know I can phrase it as of yet. But in the middle of that, now that's when the mantalk.ke podcast came to happen. So that's where I met now the guys who I spend most of my time with, which is Eli, a guy called George Ndirangu. George, mtu wangu sana.
Shout out George Ndirangu.
Shout out Georgie. And Rotimi, who's a gym guy. So Georgie is an internationally acclaimed moderator. Umse kwa Mayengs Wembe. Umse kwa Vibes Wembe.
George's by the way tuko rada yako in Nairobi.
George chunga.
Nairobi.
Ametusumbua sana. Anasumbua Nairobi na Rwanda. So the thing about Georgie ni, because you have to understand, as much as I've been exposed because of where I work and what I do, I don't have quite the level of understanding of the world that Georgie has. Okay. Eli and I are building a business every day. And you have to understand that we're doing it from the perspective of, me nimse wa Nairobi Sauti mbaya, no nimse wa Kent, England. And his perspective is global, my perspective is national, but I'm also thinking kind of, how do I structure...
It is global, bro. You've sat here and you've given us gems. Anywhere in the world, what you've said today has made a lot of sense. So I want you to say right now that you're global.
Yeah, Asante, mini global as of certified baby. Be uncertified. Bald boy.
The Bald Men Association.
Bald Men Association, I mean, certified. So in the sense that the reason why I want to say that Eli's perspective and mine, the reason why my mind suddenly kafunguka tu yote is to the possibilities. Sawa, the possibilities as to what I can do as a person and as a man, and how I can also grow myself and express myself on other people's perspectives. Rotimi is Nigerian, but he's a fitness professional. So manze amenieka pressure ya tizi.
Piga tizi, uko kijana mdogo.
Si unasikia sasa napenda, so I liked playing basketball a lot, but I let that go at some point. I lost that fitness aspect.
I mean after Upper Hill beat Bush drastically, it was
the last time I was on court, the last time I was on court, as I remember, I dropped 20 on some people with green shirts and chicks from Stato crying, but I won't say anything. So I feel like that stage of life where you're about to enter a new level really needs a different group of people to walk there with them. And I'm so happy that you're so happy being on your own.
I love it.
I've seen this guy transform, and I can say that I've learned about the beauty of solitude. From Eric. Solitude is a good thing if you're using that time positively. The world will open up to you eventually. Yeah.
So shout out to the boys, Eli, Rotimi, Georgie,
Yeah,
Nimase,
man.
Wazito, support
Is there any
system.
shout outs you want to give, Eric, by the way?
No, maybe to my house.
Hey, Eric, man, hata kuna demo za kusalimia utumesalama. This platform is also
I mean, they are wonderful.
But anyway, just give me your closing remarks.
My closing remarks would be this is important. It's important that we have these conversations and we shouldn't stop here. And let's be authentic. I mean, none of us is perfect. To I is human. If you've made an error, own up to it and turn around. After all, better is good. And I've just remembered who I would shout out. If you're a friend to Eric Stories, this is for you. Thank you. All the love.
Please tell us about Eric Stories.
Eric Stories is wonderful. So your wife and I used to work for the same company, and we both resigned. And so I was working for a radio station, and when I left, I just wanted some more quiet, because that's the only thing that I was doing that was outside of my quiet space. Yeah. So when I resigned, I started getting a lot of messages, from a whole bunch of people, and I didn't know far and wide that conversation had gone. I'd get messages from England and Nigeria and Dar es Salaam. And so there was an appeal, and guys were saying, could you please just do something small, even for 10 minutes? And so after 4 months of being very quiet, I decided, what would it hurt? So I started a web series called Eric Stories. So on Monday all the way to Friday, I pick a topic of interest to me.
And women?
Apparently women like it more. and then I do it on my socials, and it's lovely. It's great.
Guys, please check it out. But the Eric Stories is great. I go there to laugh.
Yeah.
Please, Oscar. By the way, thank you so much for coming through. You've opened our minds.
Hapana ogopa.
And I think I always say that bald men are the light of the world.
Ndio hiyo sasa.
So you really shined your light on us today.
Asante. There's one question I have for you guys before we close.
Okay.
So we do this thing on mantalk.ke where we ask every guest that comes on set, what is the most positive thing you have to say about being a man? Because the world is constantly telling us men are crap and all that. So, Bien, what's the best thing for you about being a man?
Is that celebrating patriarchy, or am I just saying
No, you yourself.
The thing I like the most about being a man?
Yeah, the thing you like most about being a man.
That's a hard question because, I don't want to say anything that will make me sound like I'm appreciating patriarchy. Okay, the best thing about being a man is that I can be my wife's husband.
So
that I can be there for my sister, that I can be my mother's son, that I can be my girlfriend's, like nigga, they call me, we talk, I know what's happening in most of the girls in my life. They open up to me about stuff. So just the best, I'm happy that as a man also I can make art that can impact generations and people around me. And so I'm just happy to be a man who is available to the women in my life to nourish them with my experience of manhood. Yeah.
Best thing about being a man is being human. It's being human.
Vulnerability.
A human being, that with all the ups and the downs and all the challenges we face every day, the ability to own up and say, you know what, I'm a human being. I'm a human being. And as Dr. Maya Angelou would say, nothing human can be alien to me.
There it is. Mine is simple. I get to challenge myself every day. Kasa hii nimekuja podcast na my favorite artist nikajifanya siko misi fanboy. Nimejifanya. Hey. Yeah, my guy. So, and shout out to everyone from Mantalk. I know the mantalk.ke community will be hyped when they see this. Trust me, and they'll be.
Thank you, Bede, for putting us on. Also, just talk about Mantalk real quick so that we can use it as a snippet too.
Oh, fire.
Elevate.
Okay. So it is mantalk.ke. Mantalk.ke is a platform that is focused on positive masculinity and spreading that message throughout men in Eastern Africa, and now that our agenda has kind of grown globally. We do that through our podcast, and we try to kind of get the men's perspective and to create a safe space for both men and women where we can share ideas and just experience life together. Recently we've done a number of interviews that are really interesting. Bien sitasema, but I might pitch you one.
Sio ni kama
kuja ukalie kitu.
Nakuja na guitar. Yo, Mantalk ina need vibes
Vibes, vibes serious. Kuja kalia kiti. You know, we're very happy to have you. Eric as well. Now that you have Eric stories, I'm very happy to collab with you as well. So if you want to bounce off ideas.
So you guys, like, what happens like when conversationalists do collabos? Is that a collabo?
Yeah, it's fire. Utasikia, hey, mtu wangu, you know that utasikia ballbox. Utasikia ballbox xmantalk.ke x Eric stories sasa.
All right.
So Agwan. So thank you, Bien. Also, I really appreciate the fact that men are the gatekeepers towards social virtue in society today, whether we like it or not. The fact that you as a leader in music and being part of what I call hands down the biggest band this part of the continent.
Oh man.
Hands down, bila kuteta, tuteti sana, tunasema tu, ni facts. Tangula zizi, I mean, anyway, actually it's quite fun. But like, ever since the fact that you've given us this opportunity to talk here as men, and to kind of, you've shared your platform and your time with us means a lot. Na so mimi nasema asante sana Jo. Boy wa Sauti Sol wazee ameishi ndoto yake.
Mseme amehype Sauti Sol kweli mazee, yani hautaki kuipa Lego?
See.
Sauti Sol mazee. Isa watongo Isa. Anyway guys, that's the ball box for today, man. That was a lot of weight. I want to thank my, sponsors, you two, for coming through and for being great. And I wish you well. I wish you greatness in everything you do. Continue shining your light to the world. Also, before we go, I have a gift for you guys. Bald men don't come with no gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what we have here.
I'm
so excited.
I'm
so excited. I want to do the
wase. Kipara culture.
This is going to help with my...
You said you want to share your own.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the latest.
Very thoughtful.
Thank
you so
and that thing would give you bumps.
And what is this about?
Yes, Kipara culture. That's it's a shea buttercream.
Yeah,
for your bald head,
And a t-shirt.
Also to remind you that bald men do love better.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we
thank
do
you so much.
We do.
Yeah, man. And thank you for thank you again. Thank you again. Asante.
Asante.
Out. Baldman out.